This agribusiness update brought to you by American Implement, indebted to the past, committed to the future. In a moment, K-State's Glynn Tonzer.
When you've had a best friend for over 50 years, you develop a trust. And the Scott Co-op has been a trusted rural friend since 1957. A co-op keeps money in the area, doing business for and with their members. And that helps keep their hometown thriving with keeping money in the community. Scott Co-op is not just an elevator. It's the rural way of doing business. So, when you see an elevator, remember your friends at Scott Co-op.
The cost of everything has gone up dramatically over the last 75 years. With one exception: keeping electricity affordable.
Wheatland Electric, delivering energy for life, your Touchstone Energy Cooperative.
And joining us now, Dr. Glynn Tonzer, Ag Economist, Kansas State University. We are reaching him here at the Risk Profit Conference, took place here in Manhattan. And well, Dr. Tonzer, you presented a livestock update, and you and I have talked several times. I would guess probably the first question you get, the first question I get, is these box beef prices, the correlation between that and live cattle. Are we going to finally come? Because we just heard the folks at Cattle Facts not too long ago said, hey, happier days are coming soon.
Yeah, and I do think those happier days are coming soon from a cattle seller's perspective, and that applies both for those selling feeders as well as fed. That in itself isn't tied to the correlation of box beef. That's a separate question. Right. But I do think the discussion between the quote-unquote disparity that's in the news all the time between beef and cattle prices will dissipate some in the months ahead. And honestly, a lot of that is to do with right size and supply. So we've gotten current with fed cattle. We still have strong beef demand. We're going to bid up more fed cattle in the months ahead. I shared some pretty positive, an optimistic forecast for fed cattle prices in the next, let's say 6 to 8 months in particular. And we've already seen that strength in the feeder cattle market. Mm-hmm. So I do think better days are ahead if you're a cattle seller.
Okay, so this summer we had a lot of cows go to town, especially north of us. Now again, that's not numbers like we see in Kansas and other places, but what kind of impact will that have then? Is that going to tighten things up finally?
And we're not done with that story, but I think important context is, there's quite a few mama cows in the Dakotas, but the majority of the states that have had persistent drought pressure are not top 10 beef cow states. So I'm not trying to be insensitive to that, but the bulk of the drought pressure has not been like Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas like we did in 2012. So yes, we've sent mama cows to town, and yes, it matters because we're going to shrink the supply of mama cows and subsequently the calf crop a little more because of it. But I don't think it's accurate to compare it to 2012, and some are doing that, mainly because of where the drought is and where the mama cows in the industry are. So we were going to be shrinking the herd a little bit anyhow. Quote unquote cattle cycle, uncomfortable volatility in feeder cattle prices does that to cow-calf producers. But the drought west of us, and particularly, think Denver and west and or the Dakotas to the north, the ongoing uncertainty for those herds is certainly of note.
I want to talk about the box beef situation in just a little bit, but I do want to talk about we're coming up on this fall's corn crop. It looks to be another big crop. Will that help when it comes to figuring out our rations and our feed costs for these feeder cattle?
Well, a bigger crop certainly helps compared to a small crop, all else equal, but we got to remember the notion of demand. So global demand for lots of things, including corn and soybean meal, is quite high. So, our constituents, Kansas livestock producers that are trying to buy that as a feedstuff, they're not the only people in the world trying to buy as a feedstuff. So a lot of why corn prices are higher is both those past concerns about the supply, which we're not out of the woods till it's in the bin, right? But nonetheless, that's there. But global demand is quite strong. So I think there's reasons to think we'll have some improvement on feed cost, but I think it's misleading to say it's going to be as good as it was a year or two ago. We have higher feed costs that are probably here to stay for at least another corn crop.
Okay. Dr. Glynn Tonzer, Kansas State University, is joining us. We're going to take a break. We're going to talk about the box beef situation, and I also want to talk just a little bit about the pork trade. We'll do that in just a moment.
Sns Trailer Sales, with 2 locations in Ness City, Kansas, is where everybody goes to buy or rent trailers. They feature the all-new, all-aluminum Mauer grain trailer with all of the electric options, the easy-to-load detached trailers, and a huge stock of header trailers. At the west location, you'll find bumper pulls, goosenecks, and oilfield specialty trailers, along with flat and utility beds for pickups. Sns Trailer Sales in Ness City and on the web, but remember, you do have to spell out the "and." Wolfter Construction and Irrigation has been around a long time, and a lot of folks have trusted them to design, build, and service all sizes of commercial and on-farm storage for grain and equipment. Wolfter is also known for their outstanding irrigation division, where they stock a complete selection of nozzles, regulators, drops, gear drives, electrical, and structure components. Looking for an electric motor? Wolfter has a large selection in single and 3-phase. Next time, reach out to the pros who have decades of experience at taking care of business the right way. Wolfter Construction and Irrigation.
And Dr. Glynn Tonser, Kansas State University Ag economist, the livestock economist, is joining us. Okay, let's just talk about this. I mean, you and I have talked several times, shared with our audience. We hear beef demand is the strongest in 30-some years. There's a piece, though, I think those in the countryside are missing. When we see every day, I mean, that morning and afternoon reports, it continues to get stronger when we have all these other outside influences that are telling us, well, people may or may not be going out. The food service is down. Where is this going? Are there other cuts and other pieces that are boosting this market?
Right. So sitting here in the middle of August specifically, I think we have a lot of uncertainty in the wholesale beef demand environment. On balance, I'm pretty positive, but compared to a month ago alone, there's a lot more uncertainty whether we're going to lose food service traffic. So the Delta variant and the like, what's that going to do? That hasn't stopped restaurants from still wanting to keep the pipeline full, but they won't keep doing that forever if the foot traffic stops. That's why that uncertainty is there. Okay. So the mixed news and mixed media discussion is we have the Delta variant, airline volume is taking a little bit of a hit and so forth. Some are going further and say, well, that slow restaurant traffic. If it does, it probably will be a bit of a pullback on not just beef, but all meat demand, because a lot of the last 3 or 4 months, a lot of the boost, we had strong demand that's been boosted by an effort to refill the food service pipeline. Well, we'll hit pause on that if restaurants take a step back, and I'm really highlighting that because that uncertainty is elevated compared to just a month ago.
But will we get back down? I guess we talked about the grains a few years ago about this new plateau we were on. That didn't last very long. Are we at a new plateau when it comes to our boxed beef?
I don't know that that's accurate because I'm confident over the next 2 years we're going to have fewer cattle to slaughter. So that's supportive on a supply side of maintaining higher prices. And we have revealed behavior that beef buyers at the wholesale level are willing to pay higher prices than we saw before in the last 2 years. That doesn't guarantee we're going to stay there. But I do think the floor could be higher, is what I'm trying to say.
Sure.
What used to be sticker shock in the wholesale beef market may not be sticker shock over the next few years, and that would be a good thing if we have supportive supplies that are holding, pushing prices up that way, and we have good demand. We should all want strong beef prices because it'll spill over, and I think you will see more of that translate into cattle prices as we right-size the herd with packing capacity.
What about? Are you concerned at all about inflation? Some of these tones we're hearing.
Yes, and one of the things we do monitor, the meat demand monitors, beef and pork checkoff funded here at K-State. The last 5 months I've been tracking consumers' expectations for 2 beef and 2 pork prices the next month, and consumers are concerned about that, and rightly so. They're seeing prices go up. But my concern isn't unique to meat. I say yes because I'm concerned with everything hitting consumers, their budget. And if we have stagnant budgets at some point, if we have any economic slowdown, then protein demand is at risk because it's expensive compared to the things in the basket.
Quickly on the pork trade, it has been, this year has been very interesting to say the least.
Yes, it has. You mean exports as well?
Yes.
That's what you mean by trade? Yeah, so it's been, interesting to say the least. I remain very optimistic that actually both beef and pork, we're going to have strong exports in the weeks ahead, the months ahead, the years ahead, barring a disease surprise. So you brought up pork.
Right.
What is relevant when we're doing this recording is there is elevated concerns around African swine fever here in the U.S. It's now in our hemisphere. To my knowledge, it's not in the lower 48 states, but there's elevated concern about that. That is relevant specific to your comment about trade, because it's very likely if that was to occur in the lower 48, and God help us, I hope it doesn't happen, that we will likely see a disruption in international trade of pork products. to be determined. I hope we're not doing interviews when that
Right.
happens. I don't want
Right.
to observe it, but it is an elevated risk
Sure.
compared to the last time you and I talked.
So you laid out a line that you're somewhat bullish when it comes to the protein sector. In this
Yes, I'm very bullish on consumers have revealed a willingness to pay for meat that we haven't seen before. Consumer incomes and savings levels are up. We'll ignore long-term debt issues for another day, but in the near term, that is very supportive.
Okay.
I think if we avoid disease surprises and inter-industry politics, which we won't belabor
Right.
here, but I shared some of those thoughts today, that there's a lot of reason to be optimistic in the livestock industry.
Very good. Dr. Glynn Tonser, K-State livestock economist, has joined us. Stay with us. We'll have more in just a moment.
Would you like to see something done about high gas prices and low unemployment? Western Plains Energy in Campus, Kansas is doing something about it. They're a proud part of Growth Energy, America's ethanol supporters, and they employ 38 people and will be adding more following the expansion. Ethanol fuel not only reduces the cost of regular gasoline, it's good for the environment and keeps money right here in the United States while supporting local rural jobs. Western Plains Energy, doing something for the future.
1030 KBUF has agriculture information weekdays beginning at 6 a.m. Market updates, weather forecasts, and ag news for the farm and ranch to help you make good decisions. You can also be social with us on Facebook and Twitter. I'm Ken Rogers. Thanks for watching.